Okay, so today we're starting the propane install on the bus. And so the propane needs for our particular bus are quite small. The only real thing we're powering is the instant water heater. So we have a tankless Girard water heater that the manual says pulls about 44,000 BTUs, and that'll become significant later when I discuss how we sized it. We also are going to do two quick connects on either side of the bus for things like maybe a grill or even a fire pit or something like that. So just so we have access to the propane outside for cooking and things like that. So those are really the only two things we're powering. So it's a relatively simple, small system. So because of that, we went with kind of a small, so we got a 30-pound tank, and that's what we're going to use. We did get it we got it recertified and got the valves and leak checked and all that. So we just did that a couple days ago. And so we had to size our system. So there's several materials you can use, and the RVIA actually has a whole book on propane safety and how to configure everything and requirements for how it is mounted and vented and all that stuff. So it's worth the $40 investment to get the PDF book to look up all they're not really codes, but they're kind of strong advisements. So we're going to go with that. We're going to follow those as closely as we can, and maybe even go further than those. If we fault one way, we're going to try to fault towards safety. So anyway, we've chosen to do black iron or black pipe or iron pipe, and it's very thick stuff. It's very durable, and so we've gone with 1/2 inch. And so the way you calculate it is there are tables that tell you what size of piping you need for the particular total BTUs you want to be able to run all at once. So if you have a stove and a water heater and a furnace and you need to run all those at once, that's what determines the size. So we have about 20 feet, and that's gracious. So we really have somewhere about 15 feet of piping. And so when we looked that up in the tables, it provided somewhere between 160,000 BTUs and 200,000 BTUs. So that was the range, and we're only really ever going to see about maybe 60,000 if we're running our furnace at the same, or if we're running our grill at the same time as the instant water heater. So I think we're going to be pretty safe with 1/2 inch. So that's what we're going to go with. We also bought an assortment of valves and things like that. We laid out our system. And so what we always do is we start with a picture. So we start with a picture and trying to figure out where all the fittings go, what all the fittings will be, try to calculate all of those things out, and then we buy as much as we can locally if we can, and then most of the time we always end up having to go to Amazon and get the rest of the fittings on Amazon, because for some reason, 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch flare, they don't carry them at the big box stores for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, this is what we're going to go with, and so we're going to get started on that today. Alright, so the first order of business was trying to figure out where we're going to put the tank. And so this is the bay that originally housed 2 propane tanks in here before with the generator, and so now we've replaced that generator with a mini split, which has been awesome. But anyway, the tank is going to live down here. And what we did was we took 2 of these, we bought 2 of these on Amazon and just welded them end to end, and so they make one grabber that's a little bit more secure. So that the regulations say you have to secure them at the bottom and at the top, and so we think this kind of counts as bottom and top. So we'll see, and then we're going to mount this in here, and then the regulator will screw onto here, and then there'll be a flexible hose, and we'll have some supports along the roof that'll hold it, and then it'll screw in somewhere over here and have a valve for the main on-off valve for the entire thing. There's also a valve on the very top. So anyway, that's our plan. So we're gonna try to fit it in here now and see how it fits. Okay, so the tank is installed, and this tank is aluminum. So what we did was we wrapped the arms of our tank holder in this, this is exhaust wrap. So we just wrapped it around just so that it would provide a little bit of cushion for the tank itself, and so it doesn't scratch it up, and because the tank is aluminum and this is like iron or steel, we didn't want a dissimilar corrosion thing going on there, so we isolated the two with this material, and it should do okay. So we've strapped it in and it's in there pretty good. So we're gonna call this part finished. Alright, so we're ready to start putting things together. So these pipes do need to be sealed. So we've got yellow Teflon tape, and it has to be the yellow kind for propane. And then we have this, it's called pipe thread sealant, refactor seal. So these are the two things we're going to use. We're going to use them both.
Two wraps on that. Or was that 3? 2.5.
Oh, 2.5.
Kind of push that in. Okay. And so this stuff.
Probably still sealed.
The only place we don't want anything is inside.
So you don't like wipe that around or anything?
Okay, so sit in.
That?
That should be enough.
All right, so we've got this all secured. It's nice and secure in here. And so now we're gonna start fitting the quick connects. And so for these are, I believe they're 1/4 inch thread on the bottom. And so we need this reducer to put them in through there. So we're gonna mount them like this. And these also have their own on-off switch when they're not in use. So that's pretty nice that we don't have to buy another valve. Alright, so it's time to pressure test the system. So we did a little bit of digging on how exactly this is supposed to be done, and it turns out that propane runs at about 1/2 of a PSI. They actually measure it in inches of water column. I think it's 11 to 13 inches of water column, which translates to roughly 1/2 of a PSI. And so the minimum that you can pressure test at is 3 times that amount. So that would be roughly 1.5 PSI. So the caveat with that is, to do that, then you need a gauge which 1.5 PSI is 1/5 of the total range of the gauge. So there's a bunch of rules on what is appropriate and what is not, and it turns out if you're measuring with a gauge like this, then to get a leak down test to be certified or whatever, not that we're certifying, but we want to do things correctly, you have to do the pressure test at a pressure that is 1/5, at minimum 1/5 of the total sweep of the gauge. So for us, we have a 100 PSI gauge, and so for us that would mean 20 PSI. So we have to test this at 20 PSI, and I think it has to hold it for 3 hours. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our air tank. So we've hooked up this gauge where the gas, so this will be the line we actually use for gas, but we've hooked up a gauge to it. And then on the other side, we've hooked up a similar gauge, but we have a fitting for the air compressor. And so we'll take our air compressor down to about 20 PSI. There's a regulator on the air compressor. We'll take it down to 20 PSI, and we'll pressurize this system until we're at 20 PSI, and then we'll shut everything off. We'll shut all the valves and just see if it holds for, I think 3 hours is the minimum. So we'll probably just leave it overnight and then we'll check it in the morning, but that's going to be the procedure. So we'll go ahead and start that now. Alright, so I've set the air compressor at about 20 PSI, and we can see here that it's about 20 PSI. So now on this side, I've gone ahead and just plugged in one of these connectors. So there, and when I turn this valve on, we should hear it go into the system, and it did. And so now I'm going to make sure I have about 20 PSI. So we have about 20 PSI. So when we open the valve on the other side that has the gauge on it, right now it should still read 0 because we've turned all of the valves off. So it should still read 0. If it doesn't read 0, then there's a problem, because then that valve doesn't work. So anyway, we're going to go over there, we're going to turn it on and see if it goes to 20 PSI. If it goes to 20 PSI, we're going to be good. We're going to go ahead and disconnect. We're going to close this valve back up. We're going to disconnect our hose, our supply line, and then leave it for 3 hours. Alright, good. So this gauge is at 0. I was hoping that would be the case. So this is at 0, and we're going to go ahead and turn it on. So we'll watch the gauge, and there it goes. And it is only reading about 15 PSI, which means the regulator on my air compressor is probably the one that's not as accurate, because that one goes to 200 PSI, and the 1/5 rule applies to that one as well. So that would be 40 PSI minimum on that one. So we're just going to go ahead and turn it up until this says 20, and then Michelle's going to yell uncle, And when she yells uncle, I'll go ahead and shut it off, and then we'll have 20 PSI in our system.
Yep, go ahead.
Is it going up?
Yep.
Tell me when.
Okay, stop.
There?
Yep. Yeah, that's right at 20.
This guy. Check this guy in the back. All right, so good morning. It's been about 18 hours since we put this on, and we're currently showing 18 PSI. And so at first that was a little troubling, but then we realized it's about 20 to 25 degrees difference from this morning to yesterday afternoon when we had put this on. So we're going to go ahead and leave it and then test it as the day, keep an eye on it as the day gets warmer. It should climb back up to 20. We looked up some charts and it said for every 10 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll drop about 1 PSI, and that would agree almost perfectly with this because it's about 20 degrees and we've dropped 2 PSI. All right, so it's about the same time as yesterday, about the same heat, maybe a little cooler, but not much. And we are registering right at 20 pounds. So we're gonna call this good. We also did a leak test where we went and sprayed all of the joints with bubbly soap and no bubbles formed. So I think we're gonna call it good. We're gonna go ahead and do the other test, which is the water column test. We're gonna set that up really quick and just to be sure that our regulator is correct. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and hook this up permanently, and then maybe we'll test out the hot water or the water heater. All right, so we've hooked up the propane. We've gone ahead and hooked it to our guy here, and so we'll go ahead and turn this on. Holy cow. Okay, so we hooked up our regulator, and we can actually hear it leaking out. So if we look here, we'll spray the bubbles, and then we'll crack open the valve and watch. I mean, this is just not, that's bad. We're gonna have to fix that or return this thing because that is ridiculous. So I'm sure that doesn't have anything sealing it. That's terrible. So we're gonna have to go ahead and fix that. All right, so we took it apart and it's got like red gum on it, but it clearly isn't sealing anything. So it did pass QC number 5. I don't know who that is, but they didn't do a very good job. So we're gonna take both of these off and we're gonna put the tape and dope all over them, seal them all back up and see if we can get it to seal. If we can't get it to seal, I'm just gonna return it. We did test this guy back here and that one did seem fine, but I'm just gonna go ahead and take that one off, seal that one up as well. So we're gonna seal all these up. And I mean, this is what happens sometimes when you buy stuff off Amazon. I might even seal that guy up, the gauge. I don't know. So anyway, this is what we're working on now. All right, so we've redone every single connection point. This is hopefully now sealed. We're gonna give it a go and see what it goes like. So here we go. All right, so this thing is no good. It leaks like crazy. You can watch the needle. You can just watch it. You can basically watch it leak off. So you can hear it and you can watch it leak off. See the needle sweeping, and it smells like propane. So this thing is just a piece of junk. So we're gonna return it. I guess we'll go to Camping World and try to buy one from there. All right, take 3 on this regulator. So we did find a regulator at Camping World. It was considerably more than the one on Amazon, but it seems to work out okay. Also, the fitting was different. It doesn't go over the top, it goes inside, which is okay. But we have it just on to this point, and we don't hear anything. Last time you could hear it hissing. We don't hear anything, and we can't smell anything. So we also bought a propane detector, which we'll be using when this is all finished, just to check every single connection and just triple check that we don't have any leaks or anything. All right, so it's time to do the water column test. So what we've done is we've marked up the hose here where the water is at equilibrium, and we've disconnected our hose up here so that we could get it all in equilibrium and it would all be the same pressure on both sides. And now we'll hook it up and turn everything on, and then when we do that, this will move. And then what we do is we measure the difference on both sides, add that together, and that will be our total water column pressure. And so our RV standard is 11 to 13 inches of water column. So that's what these are. And so our water heater specifically says 11 to 14, so maybe it can take a little bit higher pressure. So anyway, we're gonna hook this up, turn everything on, and then see what we get for water column pressure. Okay, everything's still at E. We're gonna go ahead and push this. Whoop. And there we go. So this is moved to here, and this one has moved this far. So we'll go ahead and measure them both. So from the E to the top, we've got about 7 inches.
Yeah, I would say that's 7 inches.
That's right at about 7 inches.
Yep.
Okay. And then on this guy,
It's also like 7.
it looks like it's also about 7. It's a little shy of 7, but not much. So it looks like we've got about 14 pounds of, or 14 inches of water column, which is right at the upper scale of what this guy can do. So I don't know if we're gonna adjust that. We're gonna go look that up now. All right, so the regulator was a little high, so we're gonna try to tune it back down to 12. So it's at 14 now. We'd like it at 12. So on this particular one, what we do is we turn this, and then we'll see in here is an adjustment knob or screw. And so we're gonna put this guy in here, and we're gonna turn it counterclockwise just a little bit. So there, I just turned it maybe 8 degrees. So we're gonna test that, and the way we're gonna test that is we're gonna go back to the water column. We're gonna let some air out so that it kind of equalizes, and then we'll test it again with our ruler and see where we're at. All right, so we've adjusted a little bit and a little bit and a little bit at a time, and we're now at about 12. So if we turn this on so we crack it, so we get some flow, we then take a measurement here, and we can see it's right at about 6 inches, and the other side is also right at about 6 inches. So that's about 12 inches. So we had to turn it about 3/4 of a turn before we got it to about 12. So that should be good. So that should be what we need. Okay, so we're ready to test it out. We've hooked up our hose. So our gas hose is now hooked into the back of our propane water heater. And so now we're just gonna give water. So we've got all these valves that control where we give water to. So we're gonna give water to the bathroom sink, and we're gonna go back there and see if it works.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and test out our water heater here in the bathroom at the sink. And we have this little control panel that comes with the Girard tankless water heater. And so if we just turn that on, you can adjust the temperature up and down, whatever you want your setting at. So we're just gonna set it to 105 for right now and see if the water heater is working now that we've got the propane hooked up. Is it 105?
Yep.
Yeah? So how long did that take? Like 3 seconds or something?
No, it took like
5 seconds?
5 seconds, 6 seconds.
To get the hot water up
Yeah,
here?
yeah, feel it.
Oh yeah, that is hot.
All right, so the last test is we bought this little Home Flex propane tester thing, and so we're gonna go ahead and use this. So we gotta pull this straight off, and then it says to let it calibrate for 25 seconds. So just kind of hold it in the air and it'll do this for 25 seconds. It's kind of calibrating, and then we'll check all of our joints to be sure that they don't have any leaks in them. So we'll let this thing calibrate.
Get it up at the elbow.
Yeah. Nothing so far. Stick it in there. Yeah, it's on. Oh, I thought it smelled something.
Is there a light?
It's green, but I can get it to
So when it's beeping like that, is there a light?
yellow.
Yeah, yellow. So that's saying that that means that there's a small leak.
All right, so we thought we had a small leak because this thing detected a small leak up in, whoops. This thing detected a small leak right here. And, okay, let me turn that off, that's annoying. All right, so we use the bubbles and we can see that there is a small leak there. So, is that visible?
Yeah, you can see it. You can see the bubbles coming off.
So you can see the bubbles forming. So we got to tighten that up just a little bit more. That's a little loose. All right, let me calibrate this.
It's all clear.
I think it's all clear now.
Check it again with the bubbles.
Yep. All right, so it's all, that thing gave us a clear signal, so let's go ahead and just double check it. Make sure no bubbles are coming out.
It looks clear.
Yep, no bubbles. All right, so I think we are leak free. This thing works really well. So that definitely showed us, so we checked every single connection and we did get one right here and it was leaking. So we went ahead and tightened that up and now it appears to be leak free, so we're gonna call this good. Okay, so the propane is working. So we've got it all hooked up and we've got hot water in the bus. So we're gonna call this project a success.